The Legend of Zelda is one of the most iconic game franchises of all time. The fantastic stories, creative gameplay, and big immersive worlds make The Legend of Zelda truly unforgettable. It started as 2D, but I'd say Zelda is more widely known by its 3D adventures. Today I want to talk about the amazing world of 3D Zelda games. It all started with The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time when it released for the Nintendo 64 system on November 23rd, 1998 in North America, and on November 21st, 1998 in Japan. Ocarina of Time was being developed alongside Mario 64 and Mario Kart 64 by Nintendo's EAD division with more than 200 staff members. Nintendo was just putting out hit after hit in the N64 era. Ocarina of Time was the first Zelda game to have 3D graphics. Ocarina of Time became Nintendo's biggest game ever at the time, coming in at 32 megabytes. At one time in development, the team thought the game might be too big and cause data storage problems on the cartridge. Ocarina of Time set many design elements that would be repeated in future Zelda games to come. It was the first Zelda game in the series to show Link with blonde hair. Zelda also had her first detailed character model, and Ocarina of Time portrayed Ganondorf in his human form for the first time. Many of the races throughout Hyrule made their first appearance in Ocarina of Time. The Kokiri, Gorons, Gerudo, Hylians, Deku Scrubs, and Sheikah all originated or were at least identified in the Ocarina of Time. The Zoras appeared in earlier titles as enemies. In the Link to the Past they were given the ability to walk, but their widely accepted character model, the slender sky blue aquatic design, was first made in Ocarina of Time. The story starts with Navi waking Link from a nightmare where he sees Ganondorf taking Zelda. Link is then brought to the Great Deku Tree and he explains you need to seek out Princess Zelda, then he drops dead. Zelda sends you off on an amazing adventure to get the 3 spiritual stones, and you require the Ocarina of Time to do time travel with. What makes Ocarina of Time so iconic isn't just the amazing story. It also set a huge standard in the video game industry to the point that many other games and series were influenced by the gameplay style from the game, especially the 3D action-adventure genre. Other companies tried, but couldn't top Ocarina of Time with its almost perfect scores across the board, selling 7.6 million copies worldwide. This game was the game everyone had to play on the N64 at the time. From the fun puzzles, combat, story, and soundtrack, this was a game that was truly irresistible. It's the first 3D Zelda game and it blew everyone away. Ocarina of Time is on multiple consoles now if you ever played it or you didn't have an N64 growing up like I did. It's on the Wii, Wii U, GameCube, 3DS, and Switch. Nintendo remastered Ocarina of Time for the 3DS and it's probably the best version of the game. It has amazing HD graphics and it fixed a lot of the problems the original version had. The infamous water temple is even easier to play through now. If you missed out on the 3DS, playing it on NSO Online or Virtual Console is also a great experience. People loved Ocarina of Time for many reasons, and with its huge success and importance in the gaming industry, Nintendo continued it with a direct sequel, Majora's Mask. Majora's Mask released on November 17, 2003 in North America and on November 7, 2003 in Japan. This game had a lot of similarities to Ocarina of Time due to the fact it used the same game engine and many of the same assets. But unlike Ocarina of Time, to play Majora's Mask on the N64 you had to have the expansion pack. It's a plug-in accessory that doubled the amount of RAM the console had and it allows it to take on more ambitious titles that wouldn't be possible otherwise. Majora's Mask was a really dark game. It touched on more mature tones but still had the light-hearted themes Nintendo is known for. The dark theme was like new territory for Nintendo and the Zelda series as a whole. Nintendo have touched on dark tones before like in Mother 3, but not to the levels of Majora's Mask. It's a direct sequel to Ocarina of Time and it takes place just a few months after those events. Link is searching for Navi and gets knocked off his horse and his ocarina gets stolen. Skull Kid gets introduced very early and he's wearing the cursed Majora's Mask which possessed him into being evil. He turns Link into a Deku and learns Skull Kid stole Majora's Mask from the mask salesman and he must leave in 72 hours. Nintendo made this game based on the mask salesman because he only has 3 days worth of patience and you only have 3 days to beat the game. You can always use the ocarina to set back time, but it always stressed me out as a kid. Majora's Mask wasn't as popular as Ocarina of Time, but it did a lot to be different and stand out. It had the mask system that let you be many of the fan favorite races across Hyrule, like a Goron, Deku, and Zora. I mean, you could even be her. What else is there to say? Majora's Mask doesn't even take place in Hyrule, but in a parallel world called Termina, which is refreshing for the series. Ganondorf also takes a break and doesn't even make an appearance in the entire game, and Zelda doesn't need saving. What a major positive. Ganon taking a vacation though didn't mean this game was lacking in the villain category. The Skull Kid was really cool. He was just a normal traveler that got corrupted by the ancient evil Majora's Mask. It made it where you weren't fighting Skull Kid, just the evil within the mask. Nintendo eventually remastered Majora's Mask on the 3DS, and it's probably the best version of the game. They made the visuals even more pleasing to look at, along with quality of life improvements to overall make it a better experience. You could now use the ocarina to go back to a specific hour of the day, which got rid of some of my anxiety about the time limit. Why did the mask salesman have to leave in just 3 days? How about you just wait till I get your stolen mask back no matter how long it takes, creepy man? Do you know what I went through in Ocarina of Time? If you can't get your hands on a 3DS, then you can play it on the Switch Online, Wii U Virtual Console, or GameCube. The GameCube version came on the Legend of Zelda Collector's Promo Disc, which had The Legend of Zelda, Zelda 2, Ocarina of Time, and Majora's Mask. This isn't the best version of Majora's Mask, so I don't recommend playing this over the others. Along with those 4 amazing games compiled in the collection was a demo for the next 3D Zelda adventure, The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker. Wind Waker released on March 24, 2003 in North America, and on December 13, 2002 in Japan. While waiting for the next Zelda game to be announced for the GameCube, Nintendo showed this Zelda tech demo at Space World 2000. The demo was really amazing, and at the time looked realistic seeing Link fight Ganon in a 1v1. Everyone loved the look, and then Wind Waker came out with a totally different art style. Aonuma was just tired of always doing the same thing and wanted to try something different. He kept the development quiet because Miyamoto didn't like the cartoon art style. Many people agreed and didn't like how childish the game looked, but I loved it. A bright and colorful world was a good change in my opinion after 2 dark-toned Zelda games back to back. The story was just as good as any Zelda game. Link starts off on Outset Island and has to go find his sister that was stolen by this huge bird. On your adventures, you sail the open seas and take on dungeons, solve puzzles, and do quests like in every other Zelda game, except this time, you have the entire ocean to explore. Wind Waker was really unique being the first Zelda game to be more open world, and it really fits the theme of the game. Your best friend and transportation is a talking boat, the King of the Red Lions, that takes you around the many islands in the game to gather pieces of the Triforce to take down Ganon. Yeah, Ganon's vacation from Majora's Mask didn't last that long. He's back and in a brand new art style. Like in Ocarina of Time, Link is given an instrument, the Wind Baton, to control the wind. Other than the talking boat, this is your other best friend because it lets you change wind direction to go faster on the open seas. Wind Waker was pretty much the same combat and story-wise, but the open ocean exploration and new art style was its top highlights that made it stand out the most. People complained about the cartoonish art style, but it helps Wind Waker stand the test of time. Look at Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask now. They look so dated. Nintendo even went on to remaster the game for the Wii U that made this game look even more vibrant and charming, similar to what they did with Majora's Mask and Ocarina of Time on the 3DS. I'd say Wind Waker HD is the best way to play it. The HD graphics and the addition of the Swift Sail item make it hard to recommend the GameCube version anymore. The HD version also added the hero mode to the game, which is very punishing, and I'd never play it, but it's there. To me, Wind Waker proved that Legend of Zelda franchises work in many different settings and tones, like a dark and gritty Majora's Mask, or the colorful, whimsical world of the Wind Waker. People really wanted a Zelda game similar to what we saw in the tech demo though, and all the complaints eventually led into The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess. Twilight Princess released on November 19, 2006 in North America, and on December 2, 2006 in Japan. It was a launch title for the Wii and also came out on the GameCube. The original plan was to make a Wind Waker 2, but Aonuma decided to go with Miyamoto's original plan and make a more realistic Dark Zelda game instead on a modified Wind Waker engine. The story starts as Link as a farmhand in Ordon Village, where one day it gets invaded by Bulbins. They steal one of the children and Link goes to save them. Link then gets knocked out and turns into a furry. He meets Midna in Hyrule Castle in a jail cell. Your goal with Midna by your side is to rid the world of Twilight and take down the evil Zant. Twilight Princess was the Zelda game fans wanted and loved. The motion controls made this game stand out, with the Wii being the next new thing. If you played the GameCube version, it played just like any other Zelda game. The game's tone was super similar to Majora's Mask, being dark and mysterious. It had some of the best characters and dungeons in the series, and the mini games were also a lot of fun, like fishing in the Zora's River. Exploring the lands of Hyrule is no different than past games, but Twilight Princess was a little more cinematic heavy, and the intro of the game is pretty long. The game isn't bad at all, I love it to death, but it does have a slow start. The best version of the game is the HD Wii U port. The graphics look way better and help it stay fresh looking with current times. Twilight Princess gets overlooked a lot, but I really enjoyed it. One of the most hated on Zelda games was The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword. Skyward Sword released on November 20th, 2011 in America, and on November 23rd, 2011 in Japan. The Zelda team wanted to make a game where it would be both familiar for series fans and fresh to old and new new players. Skyward Sword fan reception was all over the place. Some loved it, and some hated it. It further expanded on the motion controls of Twilight Princess, and made basically everything you do in the game a real-life workout. The Wii was super successful with its motion controls, so it made sense that the Zelda series would give it a try. The problem was they were just too motion hungry. Skyward Sword was really different and stood out from the crowd, taking Zelda in a brand new direction. The story takes place at the beginning of the Zelda timeline. You start on your floating island home Skyloft as a knight in training with your best friend Zelda. The world below is known to be a myth to the people of Skyloft. They've never seen the ground. Link passes his knight exams and Zelda gets blown away by a tornado. Then Link and his Loft Wing set off on an adventure to save Zelda in the unknown lands below. The plot of Skyward Sword is one of my favorites in the series, but with the heavy focus on motion controls, it turned a lot of longtime fans away. The intro of this game was pretty long like Twilight Princess, and that made people hesitant on giving it a try. Skyward Sword had many problems other Zelda games didn't. The story was very straightforward and linear, which is fine, but the amount of times Fee pops up on your screen just to give you a hint was mind-numbing. It's like, Fee, please shut up and let me play. Just get back in the sword. The game also had a lot of backtracking that made the game a bit tedious. But if you can get over those small issues, Skyward Sword is definitely worth playing for the amazing story. If the Zelda team just focused on making a good traditional Zelda game instead of totally designing it to reinvent the wheel, I think Skyward Sword would have been received better by longtime fans. The main problem was they needed an option to turn motion controls off, and Nintendo did just that with Skyward Sword HD port on the Switch. Playing Skyward Sword on the Wii made it hard to play for long because you got a full body workout each time you had to fight something. But I think the only reason the HD port had an option to turn off motion controls was because of the Switch Lite, having stationary Joy-Con. They also made Fee stay in the sword more, and she doesn't give as many hints. The HD port also let you skip dialogues and cutscenes in the base game, and not just in hero mode. Skyward Sword HD is the best way to experience this game if you haven't. It basically solves all its original issues. Skyward Sword was hated on a lot, but it was the last traditional dungeon-based Zelda game we got as of now, because Nintendo decided to change everything that Zelda games were known for with The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Breath of the Wild released on March 3rd, 2017 worldwide. This was a totally different Zelda experience. It was originally a Wii U exclusive game, but because of the massive size of the game, it was delayed and became a Nintendo Switch launch game. 3D Zelda games have always been known for being open world, but had a somewhat linear way to them. Breath of the Wild said, "We're not doing that anymore," and threw it away. Now you can literally go and do whatever you want in the huge open world. The game was designed to be played how you want, and it's up to the player in what order they explore. Breath of the Wild even lets you run straight to the boss fight from the start of the game. I mean, only people that like punishing themselves would do that, but hey, this game's made to play how you want. The Zelda team took heavy inspiration from games like Skyrim and Shadow of the Colossus. The fact that Nintendo could bring together a story that makes sense and still let you beat it in any order is impressive. The story starts off with Link waking up from a very long nap. While Link was asleep, Calamity Ganon destroys Hyrule. On Link's adventures, you eventually slowly restore Link's memories and restore Hyrule back to the way it was. Along the way, you run into fan favorite and new characters, and you learn what made Link take a long nap. The gameplay is totally different than any Zelda game out there, with the huge open world and no loading screens while exploring. It also has a lot of survival game mechanics that have never been in a Zelda game before. You can now cook different types of ingredients you find along your adventures to give you more health or different kinds of buffs. Link decided to take a break from saving Zelda to become Hyrule's master chef. Another new addition to the game was the Sheikah Slate. It was a tool that looks like a Nintendo Switch, and it gives you tons of abilities. You can mark beacons on the map, pick up metal objects, freeze enemies, and form ice blocks, summon bombs, and even stop time. This added so many layers of fun gameplay to experience, and many different ways that you could encounter and solve problems. Another thing that changed was the game had weapon durability. Link can't just depend on the Master Sword anymore, even that has durability. Now you gather weapons from defeating enemies, or you find good weapons in chests. It added many more options to use in combat. The only thing that sucks though is I feel the durability was too low. Some weapons would break after smacking something just a couple times. This added another layer of survival to the game that wasn't in older entries. You have to always make sure you're prepared in this game, or it can be really tough. What's cool is Breath of the Wild had many different armor sets you could swap between when you want. Many of the armor sets had different types of buffs to help you in certain situations. The one thing that's crazy is they got rid of the traditional dungeon system that's in previous 3D Zelda games. They usually had you complete each dungeon to progress the story on a set linear path. With Breath of the Wild's design being so open and full of choices, they got rid of the traditional dungeons and replaced them with 120 shrines. Each shrine had a different challenge you had to overcome, like defeating enemies, moving a big ball to a certain location, and using the stop time feature to progress platform challenges. Breath of the Wild went through many different changes that made it stand out from every 3D Zelda game ever made. If you were a super fan of traditional Zelda games like Majora's Mask, Twilight Princess, or Wind Waker, you might not have liked Breath of the Wild. But me personally, I love the traditional games and I still very much enjoyed Breath of the Wild. It was a welcoming change. I don't think just because Breath of the Wild changed the formula we all know means the traditional Zelda games are gone forever. I still think in the future we will see both styles just like we have 3D and 2D Zelda games like Link's Awakening and Echoes of Wisdom. After the crazy success of Breath of the Wild, Nintendo decided to continue the open world trend further with a sequel, Tears of the Kingdom. Tears of the Kingdom released on May 12, 2023 worldwide. The Zelda team had so many DLC ideas for Breath of the Wild that it turned into Tears of the Kingdom. The goal was to create something new but retain what was already good, kind of like Paper Mario 64 to the Thousand Year Door. The story takes place a few years after Breath of the Wild and it begins with Link and Zelda exploring the forgotten past beneath Hyrule Castle. As they went deeper in, they found Ganondorf's rotten corpse and Link lost his arm. The gloom then took Castle Hyrule and launched it into the sky. Holes then showed up that led to the forgotten past of Hyrule, and sky islands appeared that remind me of Skyward Sword. Tears of the Kingdom is what a true sequel is supposed to be. It took everything good about Breath of the Wild and added more. It was the same map but added so much more to explore and more gameplay mechanics that made it even better. The biggest focus of Tears of the Kingdom would probably be creativity. Breath of the Wild gave you a lot of freedom of choice to play your own way. Tears of the Kingdom turned it to 11. The Sheikah Slate is gone, but instead, it was really worth losing your arm because you got this fancy arm instead. It allows Link to basically do whatever he wants with the abilities it gives you. You can fuse weapons together to create a new one, attach items together, even create vehicles to use on your adventures. Anything you can imagine is possible in this game. The amount of ways you can overcome challenges is limitless. The world is even bigger with an entire underground and sky islands added to the world. This game has so much to keep you busy and always discovering new things. If I had to choose what is better, Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom, I don't know if I could decide. Breath of the Wild was something brand new and groundbreaking to the series, and Tears of the Kingdom made it better. I recommend both of these games. They are masterpieces. The one thing I didn't like though is Tears had a $70 price point. No one wants price increases. But The Legend of Zelda is a very special franchise, and no matter what game you choose to play, you're pretty much guaranteed to have a great time. I hope you enjoyed the video. I'm Tankingway. I'll see you in the next one.